A few days ago, precisely on April 30, Iran celebrated an important, public holiday that missed the news all over the world. I want us to talk about it. That public holiday is called the Persian Gulf Day. You see, the significance of that day was brought to bear, was put on the media table by the current supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Mujtaba Ali Khamenei, the son of the slain and immediate past, supreme leader of Iran, in person of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He put out a press statement. As usual, he wrote the press statement and sent it to the state media, to the Iranian state media, to read to the people of Iran. So that press statement actually emerged, on some of the platforms of the Ayatollah himself and the Iranian media platform. And from there, I picked it. And you see, it taught us a lot of lessons. In the text of that statement, the Ayatollah of Iran, the supreme leader of Iran, celebrated with and congratulated, the people of Iran on the occasion of the Persian Gulf Day. According to him, the Persian Gulf, the Persian Gulf Day has a history, and that history is that this year, the year 2026 of the Gregorian calendar, is 400 years. This year they are celebrating the 400th anniversary, the 400th anniversary of when Iran wrested control of the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf from the Portuguese. That incident, that war, that naval war that the Persian ancestors, of the current country of Iran fought against the Portuguese, where they won that battle and they wrested control of the Persian Gulf and the immediate Strait of Hormuz, from the Portuguese, from the country of Portugal, happened back then in the year 1622. Imagine that history. It means that the history of that war alone, 400 years, is actually more than 150 years older than the entire age of the United States of America, which will only celebrate its 258th anniversary this year. That is on one hand. Now, I went back and did some research and brought the product of that research to you. I went back into history and I asked myself, beyond that battle for the control of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, since back then in 1622, when some of our ancestors were not even born, had there been other scuffles, other military conflicts, between the Persian nation, between Persia and modern day Iran, which is the progenitor of the Persian nation, and the other power centers, other powerful countries and empires of the world for control of and the soul of the Strait of Hormuz and the wider Persian Gulf. I found a lot. And that lot is what I have come to download to you and discuss with you and expose to you today in this video. You see, after that 1622 battle, where the Persians actually prevailed over the Portuguese and won control of the Persian Gulf back, the British also made a plea, for the Strait of Hormuz. That happened circa, between the 80s and the 90s, if I get my research right. So that happened in the 1950s, around the period, when Iran and the Anglo, the British oil company, I think they called it the Anglo British Anglo Company or something. Essentially, the progenitor of Shell of today, was the oil company that fought Iran for the control of its oil resources. The oil resources of Iran was then nationalized by the then Prime Minister of Iran in the name of Prime Minister Mossadegh. However, the British did not want the Iranians to take control of the oil resources from them. So there was a brief military scuffle, and Iran not just gained control of the oil resources, but were successful in actually pushing the British out of the Strait of Hormuz. That happened in the mid-50s, 1953, 54, 55, circa That's about that. Before then, the Dutch too actually made a play for the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. And eventually again, the Iranians and all the Persians also what? Also defeated them in the process. Now, in the 1980s, between the year 1980 to 1988, the Americans came. I want you to note very well, 1622, the Portuguese came, they defeated them. Sometimes in the 1800s, the Dutch came, they defeated them. 1953, 54, 55, the British came, they defeated them. 1980 to 1988, the Americans came. And this time around, the battle that ensued then is called the Tanker Wars. Yes, the Tanker Wars. Who were the belligerents? Who were the dramatis personae of the Tanker Wars? Number one was the Americans, who particularly, just like they won this time, they want unimpeded movement along the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. Number two were the Kuwaitis, who were ensconced, who got trapped in the middle of the wider Iran versus Iraq war. Number three were the Iraqis, particularly led by Saddam Hussein, who was the Iraqi leader that actually made a play, to try to capture territory from the Iranians immediately after the Islamic Revolution launched in 1979. You see, Saddam Hussein made an assumption, just like the Americans are doing today. Saddam Hussein made an assumption that because there is a change of leadership in Iran from the Shah dynasty, essentially the monarchy of Shah Pahlavi, and the power was transmuted to the Iranian clerical leadership, and the person of the first supreme leader, particularly in the name of Ayatollah Khomeini, as against the Khamenei that succeeded him. Saddam Hussein assumed, like many other countries would assume, that Iran was at its weakest and most fragmented and disunited at that time. So he assumed that if he made an incursion into Iran at that time, that it would succeed, because there will not be a whole of society response against him. It was very wrong. He tried it not up to a year after the revolution in 1979. That was 1980, and the war, instead of lasting for a few days like Saddam Hussein assumed, it went on to stretch on for 8 complete years. And eventually gulping a casualty number of close to 1 million people on both sides who died in the wars. You see, the Tanker Wars was a subset of the wider Iran versus Iraq war. The Iran versus Iraq war was largely terrestrial, ground to ground, firing missiles, firing all sorts of artillery from Iraqi ground territory to Iranian ground territory. But the small naval component of the wider Iran versus Iraq war that lasted for 8 years was the Tanker War that happened principally on the Strait of Hormuz and the wider Persian Gulf. So Iraq started it. And after Iraq started it, it eventually involved Kuwait on the Persian Gulf. America came in to try to loosen control of Iran, over the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, particularly by reflagging Kuwaiti, tankers with American flags. In the process, Iran came in to stop that essentially, taking control, so to say, of the Strait of Hormuz from them. And then they started trading naval mines. America was attacking Iranian naval assets in the name of ships, in the name of boats and other military assets on the Persian Gulf, while the Iranians were setting up naval mines for American, Iraqi, Kuwaiti, and other hostile, civilian and military ships. That lasted for quite a while, eventually ended in 1988, and that was about the fourth battle fought over the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz until this current blockade that is happening, which makes it number 5. So as you can see, there has been a long and checkered military history of the Persian Gulf and of the Strait of Hormuz, and that is why we have a Persian Gulf Day today. Thank you very much.